what were the most challenging stories to write or story to write, or the most enjoyable story to write?
Right. So, some of the most enjoyable were the ones that had jokes and humor. People see me as pretty heavy and serious, and I am as a person, but I love humor. And I've often thought, oh, if a story is fun and funny, it's probably not any good because it was too easy or something. There are a couple of stories here, one in which someone's cracking jokes. It's called The Innocent. These both involve older men and roots. There's like these grandfatherly types and their adult daughters. And I had a lot of affection for these older men in these stories. And I don't know that it's necessarily a relationship like I had with my own father, but they were certain types and their daughters had nice relationships with them. And and their way of relating with one another was often through a light kind of humor. And I enjoyed writing those. They were fun. And in one of them, he's a kind of older guy and it's called Roots. And he connects with his daughter, marries a guy who has a 13-year-old son. And the son becomes interested in old Jewish gangsters and convicts and stuff. And the grandfather type likes to feed
Yeah.
that to him. So I had a good time writing that. Those were a lot of fun. And the other one called The Innocent, where their family just can't help cracking jokes. And it turns out that the narrator is a woman who's getting divorced. Her husband couldn't stand her sense of humor and divorced her almost over it. It wasn't really that. It's just that it showed that the guy wouldn't give this woman a break. He couldn't even bring himself to laugh at her jokes, and that's when she knew it was the end. Cut her a little slack. But I enjoyed that she made up jokes, and I even made up one of them. I found a lot of my life. Those were fun because I could use a little humor, even though they were serious stories, but they had humor in them. One of the hardest ones to write, in a way, was is easy. It came fast, but it was very personal. It's called Bus. It's about a mother with a son who's having cancer, and it won a prize. I was really surprised because
Yeah.
I really thought the story failed because I wasn't sure if it was clear on the ending. But I never wanted to write about that because I have a son who did have cancer, and sitting through his treatments was one of the most difficult things to do as a mother, where it was like he said, and it said it in the story, like, no drama, mom. Like, and I
Yeah.
it
Oh.
did. And in the story, I wrote how like the woman sits there and stares at the same page of the magazine hour after hour, week after week, which was true. And I just never thought I would do that. But what happened was I was teaching a class. It was one of these classes where people write during the class. You have 15, you talk, you read, you do prompts, you do exercises. And then there was like a 15-minute writing session. And I would always make it a point to write myself during that time because I would say to the participants, be bold, be fearless, don't get up from your chair, don't be afraid, take whatever comes. And I had to put my money where my mouth was.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
I started to write about this unusual bus, which was a true story. There was a bus that was decorated with stuffed animals that I used to ride to the job I had. So I wrote about the bus, thinking, all right, I'll just write about the bus. And the story yanked me away into this memory of sitting with a young man getting cancer treatment. And I had to stay there in the room with the other.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was almost like written against my will. On the other hand, it was a short, very short story, and it had a lot of feeling, and it got published. And like I say, somebody gave it a prize, and that was nice. But it came out of a part of me that like was reluctant.
That's oh god, hearing that your background behind that just makes that story so much more powerful. Because I remember, yeah, I was like, "Oh, it's short." It was like, "Wait, oh, that's it?" But I was still like
Yeah,
that was one of those stories where I was like, "I needed a second. I needed a
yeah,
minute because it was just it was so impactful."